validation, now I validate myself. Building inner strength, putting doubt up on the shelf. No more unnecessary drama, no more wasted time. Climbing higher constantly, making my own climb. Standing on higher ground, where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds. Raising the bar, breaking ground. My network is my net worth. Choose your company wise. Surround yourself with eagles, not with sheep in disguise. Every interaction is a reflection of my brand. Quality over quantity, that's my personal command. Standing on higher ground, where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds. Raising the bar, breaking ground. Whoa, I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision. Cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield. To mediocrity and chaos, I will never yield. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision. Cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield. To mediocrity and chaos, I will never yield. Standing on higher ground, where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds. Raising the bar, breaking ground. I'm not just living, I'm manifesting my vision. Cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield. To mediocrity and chaos, I will never yield.
How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to This and That. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. Today is the day I told y'all that we were going to cover this topic. It's been happening for the last couple weeks. So strap in because I got a lot of stuff that I'm going to talk to you guys about. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe if you're following us from YouTube. If you're following us from Twitch or Twitter, make sure you hit the like button there, and also try to follow to the channel because we give you guys new information every day of the week. And we don't let the sun rise without going live. We have a different topic. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we cover business and finance information, politics, and how things negatively impact our ability to make money and the ability to make money for us. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we talk about how to improve ourselves and our decision-making skills in business, finance, personal relationships, social networking, because they play off of one another. And then Sunday is our members only shows where it's open to the public right now. And we do questions and comments from the fans. So every day, around about same time, around about this time, every night of the week, you'll see us going live on the show. Sometimes we start a little bit late. We usually are supposed to start at the top of the hour, but you know, it's like I said before, better late than never. We will not let that sun rise without going live. So today we're going to be talking about the situation with ICE. Before I get into that, I want you guys to make sure that y'all note that you can click the link, approve the mic, approve the camera, and say what you want to say in real time. I recommend and request that you keep your comments appropriate. If you are not willing to be seen on the camera, you can simply put your comments in the comment section. But again, I request that you keep yourselves and your comments appropriate. I do not mind you disagreeing with the information that I have to give you. By all means, you can be the exact opposite of everything that I say on the show, and you will still be able to see appropriate comments on the show in the comment area. However, those individuals that are extremely negative or inappropriate will be banned from the show. So let's go ahead and tiptoe through today's story. Now, I'm just wondering, for the sake of, in case y'all didn't know, have you seen the headlines? Have you guys even heard the whispers? ICE raids are supposedly paralyzing the nation, right? That's what they've been talking about for the past 2 weeks. Businesses are vanishing. Local economies are collapsing. It's a narrative filled with fear, ghost towns, and the idea of a country teetering on the brink. But how much of this is really happening on our main streets, and what actually occurs when the heart of local commerce just stops? Well, imagine your town's familiar rhythm just gone. Shops are dark. The streets are eerily quiet, not from a storm, but from something man-made. That's the fear gripping parts of America as we speak. So, what are the hard facts behind these feelings? What's the real cost when a community is pushed to its limits? Well, in early June 2025, social media and various reports went wild with dramatic stories out of Los Angeles. Massive militarized ICE raids. We heard about scores of federal agents, helicopters, and operations targeting busy commercial zones. And these stories claimed huge riots followed, with burning cars, hundreds of arrests, and even the National Guard and Marines being deployed against the wishes of state and local leaders. Some accounts even said government workers were trapped in buildings under siege. The picture painted was one of the utter chaos, not just in Los Angeles, but potentially across the nation. But here's where we are going to make a couple of corrections, because in mid-June of 2025, it's time to separate what went viral from what's been verified. So after checking official ICE releases, statements from law enforcement, and reports from major national local news outlets, those specific large-scale events in Los Angeles didn't quite go the way they were talking about going. Yes, there were riots. Yes, there were protests, but there's no credibility or widespread evidence for the statements that they were making about the unexpected incoming of militarized raids. If you were watching this and that, I specifically told you a month ago, what was it, May 7th, I think it was, when the star on the license was a mandatory thing, and I started telling you guys about that, coupled with the voluntary get out campaign that Donald Trump was doing shortly after that, that I was putting this type of behavior in August, but apparently they decided to go ahead and start doing it now but in August it's going to be worse. But I gave it at least 2 more months of, voluntarily get out, or we're going to force you out kind of behavior. And I explained exactly this behavior on the show, that there would be military raids. I was talking about them coming in the dead of night, snatching in individuals, kicking in doors, catching people while they're asleep, whole families coming up missing. I was not projecting citywide riots, because that would require the same Americans that demand the immigration laws be enforced for illegal Americans to be the exact same Americans out in the streets rioting. So if you really wanted everybody to get out who wasn't a documented person, then there wouldn't be any rioting. So I didn't talk to you guys about how this would cause rioting. I was talking to you guys about how people who have been here for decades, who pay taxes, pay bills, have full-time jobs, started up businesses, will be snatched out of their lifestyle and forced back to a country that they put a lot of effort into getting away from. Now, there is citywide riots, but not the way they're projecting them. And the federal military deployment in Los Angeles is certain stories that it kind of happened that way, but it didn't happen the way they exaggerated it. And the claims about government officials trapped in buildings besieged with rioters, I just want to tell you guys, because we're going to go through this, that it didn't go down that way. So this doesn't mean that immigration enforcement isn't happening, though, or that it doesn't have serious consequences. ICE has been open about its plan to increase enforcement across the country in 2025. For instance, ICE mentioned that in the first 100 days of potential second Trump administration terms, the agency arrested over 66,000 individuals and really stepped up worksite enforcement. But the idea that the entire nation is currently paralyzed by the specific dramatic events some Los Angeles reporters described, that needs to be much closely looked at. Okay. There are aggressive immigration raids conducted by the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement in recent weeks, involving large-scale, highly coordinated operations across Los Angeles and other parts of South California, where the raids were executed with military-like approach, involving not only ICE, but also agents from Homeland Security investigation, the FBI and the DEA. So they didn't bring soldiers in. Okay. They said militarized invasions and abductions, and that wasn't the case. It was the feds, DEA, Homeland Security, ICE, the Alphabet Boys came in, not the military. Agents were heavily armed. Let's just restate the fact that usually feds, DEA, CIA are ex-military. A lot of local law enforcement are ex-military. So when they're coming through with their previous training, implementing it in their local law enforcement capacity or government agency capacity, you will see what looks like military style attacks on American soil from typically individuals in unmarked clothing, dark clothing, jumping out of black SUVs with no plates on them, because who's going to stop them? They are, as I said before, heavily armed, masked, so you can't tell one from the other. And they arrived in large numbers. Witnesses reported 50 to 80 agents in over 30 vehicles, and even helicopters deployed at some sites. Raids took place at multiple locations simultaneously. This prevents anybody from tipping anybody else off. And this includes the Los Angeles Fashion District, clothing wholesalers, Home Depot stores, and Westlake District, and a donut shop, day labor centers, and other businesses known for employing immigrant workers. These actions were concentrated in areas with substantial immigrant populations and labor-intensive industries. So many of the arrests were administrative, meaning they were for civil immigration violations, such as overstaying a visa or lack of legal status, and did not require criminal charges or judicial warrants. This is what got everybody pissed off, because if you have caused an administrative violation like this, and that requires you to be deported, that allows them to come and grab you with no paperwork necessary. All they need to know is that your paperwork has expired and you have not put in the effort to renew it. Now, I had a conversation with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and it was interesting because she was telling me about how the people who come here and never apply for their citizenship refuse to assimilate to the current country that they're living in, are allegedly doing so out of fear. I'm going to be honest with you. I can personally attest to, if you're making a drastic change out of fear that you might go into hiding for a few weeks, few months, but you cannot lead me to believe that you will start up a business out of fear and register your business and register your employees and file your taxes and all this other stuff, but not do the citizenship paperwork. If you're afraid, you're spending money where you have to spend money, keeping everything under the table and doing the best you can not to file for nothing or document anything or anything to that effect. That I can see people doing out of fear. But being in America for 10, 15, 20 years, starting up a business, hiring other people who went through the same thing you went through, creating jobs, filing taxes for your business, registering your business, establishing credit. You're already on government papers. I don't understand why you won't just run out there and just grab your citizenship. I feel like that makes absolutely no sense. Now, real quick, special shout out to Stevens from Twitter X. He says, what do you think about the ICE raids? I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so I think that we should not be getting rid of our manual labor infrastructure. I personally believe that the individuals that are here, even if they didn't do it the way you wanted them to do it, and you're pissed off about it, they come here, they spend money, they create jobs, and as long as they're not causing any trouble, they're part of the paying part of the economy. I've already covered on several shows over the past couple of months, explaining how for every 1,000 immigrants that you get rid of, 44,000 Americans are going to lose a job, because the low-income community that comes from migrant workers is the exact same quantity of people that are being targeted by businesses that do things for low-income communities. Steven says that's what I'm saying. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe and follow us on Twitter, because your comments are able to be seen here, even if you're on Twitch or YouTube. This is a multi-platform show here. The thing that I've pointed out before is, for example, the once you get rid of them, because it's what, 13 million of them, right? They spend money in low-income areas. So big businesses that target low-income families, you're going to be losing 13 million customers, 13 million families, right? Which means that you're going to have a surplus of resources. You're having a surplus of resources, having a low demand with a high supply. You're going to have to offset. You're going to be laying off people because you're not going to have as much work to do. The same way we covered how the liquor companies are unemploying a large quantity of individuals because they don't have the $30 billion worth of sales to Canada anymore. The fact that they are doing this for the sake of it, it's not like they're doing it because these people are on welfare and everything like that, and they're taking away from because I did say when I first covered this last year that it's not fair that American citizens can be homeless and put in jail for being homeless, and immigrants can come over unlawfully and get asylum, get residency. Well, not residency, but like refuge. They have apartments and whatever. They can get found jobs. They can get clothes and food and everything like that effect because they're in asylum. But people who are born and raised here have a catastrophic life event, and now they're living on the street, and the police are going to put them in jail instead of putting them in a refuge location where they could rehabilitate themselves. And I was like, wait, our government is doing too much for people who did not put effort into this economy, and then they're taking the rest of us and throwing us in jail. I think that was a bad decision, but it's a money-making decision because they make money off of all the heads in jail, privatized incarceration, and then there's somebody paying somebody somewhere, which is the reason why these folks are able to come in and make money off of the immigrants. Because think about the big businesses that hire those immigrants below minimum wage, unsatisfactory work conditions, because who's going to complain? You're not even supposed to be here. So when they put a stop to that, you realize works are going to be $10 a grape, not $10 a bag, $10 a grape. Salads are going to be $35. You got to understand that until AI takes over, the industry is going to end up having the average college student picking cotton in a field on a machine with a tech degree talking about some $35 an hour, where these folks are coming from somewhere else and they're willing to do it $5 to $7 an hour, when minimum wage is being forced up to $15 an hour in some areas, $35 an hour in other areas. Steven says, but the real criminals don't work. Bro, the real criminals are hanging out. What is it? 501 of them hanging out in the same location for 6 months out of the year, talking about what the hell's going to happen with our GDP. And then after that, they go enjoy the pleasures of life. Think about that for a second. Because what system is set up where, worse than the church, you're giving 10% of your income to somebody who does nothing for you. That's what you're doing with the church. But with the government, you're giving up to 36% of whatever you didn't give to the church to your local government for them to not do anything for you. And these folks are getting between $165,000 and $235,000 a year to work 90 days out of the year. When they work extra because of the government lockdown situation right before everything is allegedly supposed to stop, they put in an extra 90 days. So they work 6 months out of the year, which is less than a fucking teacher. And they make annual salaries where they can retire off of doing this job. You know that they're supposed to be in office the same way we're supposed to do jury duty. So they're really only supposed to be there for 2 years out of their life. And then somebody else is supposed to be there. But the rest of us don't want to try. So the same 501 people stay in the same building for 25, 50 years. And they just move from seat to seat every 2 years like musical chairs. And then when they decide to retire out of the situation, they're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars at 30 years old to no longer do this anymore. And so that their homeboy can take over. That's what we've got going on. The majority of the pension from the government comes from retired employees that are retiring, because really retirement is doing a full term and then stopping. But an individual that's in the government for 10 or 20 years and retires, you can retire doing 20 years from 18. You get in it at 18, you retire at what, 35, 38, 40. And from 40 to 90, you're getting paid CIA money. You're getting paid DEA money. You're getting paid FBI money. You don't got to do a 40-year stint. Matter of fact, you could get fired because you pissed off the boss, and they will just do a forced resignation where you still get all your benefits. They kick you out of the building, and then you're sitting there still getting paid to stay at home. You don't even have to go to work anymore. Those guys become private security guards because they want to get out in the field and be active and do what they used to do. They're not getting jobs because they have to, but we pay for their retirement. That's coming out of U.S. tax dollars. The same way that $600 billion plan for the defense that we got going up between the wall and the Golden Dome of America. Okay. This is some real stuff. Hold on. Steven said, I would agree with the ICE raids, but they're doing no due process and targeting any person with brown skin, regardless of immigration status. Now, I don't agree with the ICE raids. I don't agree with the ICE raids at all. And the reason why I don't agree with the ICE raids is because instead of you just forcing registration, because that's really your only complaint, is that they're not American citizens. Forcing the paperwork, you are snatching them out of their homes, snatching them off of their jobs, and kicking them out of the country. Now, my argument is when it comes to the immigrants, we have American-born citizens who have voluntarily surrendered their citizenship and call themselves sovereign nation individuals. They're those people you see on social media. Then those are real videos of jackasses riding through the streets, getting pulled over with fake plates, fake ID cards, talking about I'm not driving, I'm traveling, I'm not this, I'm not that, and I'm a sovereign of the land and all this other crap. And you got some people out there that are like, oh yeah, you can do the right paperwork and put it to the and get rid of your citizenship. You can't tell me that you were born here, you hate it here, and then you're gonna stay here, work here, live here, build a life here and not be included in the head count as one of the citizens. Fuck all that. And those guys wasn't getting kicked out of the country. So I don't think that when you start kicking out folks, the people who said that they don't want to be an American, those are the first ones that need to be tossed out. Everybody else who came to America for the American dream, I believe that they're supposed to be here because America was built off of a melting pot of individuals that were rejects from their old country. They were exiled from their own country. They fled from their own country out of fear, inability to pay debt. Some of them were criminals that were ejected from their countries. Some of them sold themselves into slavery in order for them to get amnesty from other countries because they had to pay off their debts some kind of way. That's one of the ways that slavery began back in the beginnings of this country. Nobody had paperwork when they first got here. They showed up and they just started contributing. Now, as long as the individuals are contributing, I feel like they should be here. Now, when they start claiming that they can't work and that they're unemployed and they need government assistance and they're not an American citizen, that's when I feel like they need to go somewhere else. But as it stands, if they're contributing to the society more than a lot of Americans are contributing to the same society, I kind of feel like you should kind of leave them alone. Special shout out to 64K. He said deport them all, bro. I can't say nothing about look, this is about to go south. I'm gonna be telling y'all about how this is gonna go south in just a minute. Steven said America gonna start declining like its economy, bro. The population, when they get rid of the 13 trillion non-Americans, they're going to have a system in place, because you do realize that there are certain crimes that can occur in America that does qualify for extradition, meaning that you could be a natural born citizen and still be kicked out of the country for some of the things that people do around here. They put everybody in jail because they profit off of that. And they profit off of it more than one way, because they get like 40 something dollars a head or more per inmate that's in the jail. Then they have the free labor workforce where these guys become trustees and they're doing community service and work release programs where they can serve their sentence, just like that movie Life, where they're working for pennies on the dollar, manual labor, which is the backbone of our infrastructure. And it's just a modernized way for us to have slavery where individuals are thrown in jail without actually being convicted of doing something. They have to prove their innocence. And if they can't prove their innocence, even if they haven't been proven guilty, the whole time they're sitting in jail, they are working for nothing, hoping that they can get time served and get out. Some of them take plea deals because they don't have a good lawyer, because public defenders are overworked and don't have the knowledge and skill set to juggle cases. You're just a name on a docket, and it just really pushes everybody in the wrong direction. It's crazy. But the fact is that it's another way for them to benefit from free labor, a free labor workforce, which is what the South had when the North took over the South. It was a free labor workforce. And me saying this with the good tan that I have, I'm not saying that what happened to the people was right. What I'm saying is that the economic standpoint was it was a free labor workforce. So individuals who had businesses who only had to pay for the cost of creating the product and not having to pay for the cost to have the worker make the product, they actually had larger profits back then. And they're changing that now. Value that some workers are getting paid like $35 an hour in some areas in America where they have machines now that Digitech made, Boston Dynamics made, Elon Musk has put out there. I can't remember the one that, I think it was Boston Dynamics, the Honda dealership, where they're now having robots that are working at $35 a day. Which, when you think about the pennies on a dollar for the community service workers, where they're probably making $10, $20 a day, they get 2 meals during feeding time so that they can have enough energy to get out there and work for room and board, right? That's the American way now. So between that and the illegal immigration, where individuals were getting paid less than minimum wage, far less than minimum wage, and they would work extra hours in order to make things work, not complain about what they're getting, because the US dollar is more than the peso. And a lot of them came to America to make the money and send it back to their home country. So they will live a poverty lifestyle so that they can give their family back home a better standard of living. A lot of them, as a matter of fact, could come to America and have 40 people in a 1-bedroom apartment and everybody riding the back of the same F-150 and everybody come up. And it's amazing how 40 Mexicans can come together, and within a couple years, 40 Mexicans have 40 F-150s, but 5 Americans can't come together, and in 20 years have anything other than YouTube fights. Think about it now. Special shout out to Devlin. He said, we should not pay 30% salary tax plus tax on every purchase, nor should we work 5 days a week. I don't blame sovereign people for trying to use the same loopholes our president uses. Hey, I'm going to tell you right now, I agree that we should not be paying 30% taxes. But where's the money going to come from to pay for the government? Until Donald Trump's sovereign wealth fund comes together and starts paying the government for the government's expenditures, somebody's got to pay the taxation. But I believe that with the way they used to do it, they taxed everybody on the same merit, where a billionaire being taxed 30% is a way larger quantity of compensation than a financially challenged individual paying 30%. 30% of a $30,000 a year income is like what? $9,000, less than that, but $4 billion, you take 30% of $4 billion and you're really helping out that deficit for the GDP. But the issue is that the rich is going to fix it where the rich get richer by getting tax cuts and tax deductions through their LLCs and C corporations, which is why I told you guys on the show many of ways where y'all could build your own C corporations and LLCs and get tax deductions so that you're not paying that taxes, writing it off on your LLCs and your C corporations. But the fact is that the money's going to come from somewhere. Somebody's got to put the money in, because the U.S. government doesn't make a profit yet. People work 5 days a week because they have to, not because they want to, and they're not being forced to work 5 days a week. They're working. Some of them are working 6 and 7 days a week because the amount of money they're being paid per hour isn't enough to cover their standard of living, because a lot like slavery, modern day slavery, they're giving each one of us just enough money to survive, not living wage where we can live comfortably. They give us just enough money so that we don't die, so that we can come back to work and work tomorrow. It's baiting the hook. It's like the carrot on a stick, where we have just enough, but we need more. So we're going to keep coming back begging for more. And whether you're a sovereign person or not, you're not breaking through that loophole. You're being put on a federal watch list now because you're not an American citizen anymore. So now the feds have wiretapped your house and all this other stuff. You've got random people following you when you walk down the street. I mean, yeah, it does change your but bro, like Donald Trump said, taxation is voluntary. You don't have to fill out a 1040 every year. You just have to fill it out honestly when you do fill it out every year. So, I mean, giving up your citizenship isn't going to change nothing, really. But everybody who wanted a damn stimulus check had to be a U.S. citizen, when the government was giving a couple $1,000s a year to everybody who was registered and filing that 1040 EZ, talking about some, I ain't got no money, right? IRS only going to come after you within 10 years. If they don't come after you for whatever money they thought you had, they ain't getting it. You know, if they send you a check, if they send you a bill in the mail and you pay it, ain't nobody asking no questions. But if they send you a letter in the mail and you contest it, they're going to audit you. So it's like, think about it now. Think about it now. Steven said, for real. Now, we're gonna have to start printing money. Nah, man, we don't. You got to understand, we're not going to be printing money, guys. We're actually switching to digital currency, which is one of the reasons why Elon Musk was on the bandwagon with the stuff that Donald Trump was putting in the first like 100 and something executive orders, the most executive orders signed in 90 days, in 30 days. In 30 days in the history of America. But he did enough putting it out there for the fact that you can get into cryptocurrency, and cryptocurrency doesn't have taxation on it. And a lot of cryptocurrency is not going to be dealing with a currency exchange, because the value of the item in cryptocurrency is going to be the same value of the item in different countries. So the fact is that we will see ourselves slowly transitioning into cryptocurrencies. It just depends on which ones each country is going to push for, because I've covered a couple shows where several different countries are leaning towards cryptocurrencies in order to get into the world trade. So real quick, special shout out to Bayside. He's one of those guys that comes here on a regular basis. I love seeing Bayside. I got something. He's one of our longest watch fans next to Mr. Satellite. He's always up in this bad boy, giving us insight and information and bringing left field questions that really inspires the conversation. So I want to bring special attention to Bayside, because he's diving into an active conversation right now. Bayside, you got a lot to catch up on, and I really hope that you can give us a lot of insight today. Yeah, I got to put you out there, bro. Special shout out to Jocelyn. She says printing money will cause hyperinflation. Hyperinflation is caused by wasteful people getting access to more capital gains and then having more discretionary funds instead of investing them, like I've been telling y'all, to invest your your principal and spend the interest. That's what really causes hyperinflation. You can make billions of dollars of money on a daily basis, but if we look at certain things and say, I don't need that, or you're charging too much for it, and stop buying wasteful shit that you don't need, you would not deal with inflation. Certain inflation you can't control, like the tariffs, for example. The tariffs are going to cause the cost of products to get to the selling point to be more to ship it there. The manufacturers are going to offset the cost of shipping onto the customer. That's an inflation you can't control. However, if the price of the product is too damn high in comparison to what you expect it to be, for example, brand new cars for 2025 are $3,000 to $5,000 more, sometimes $10,000 more, simply because the parts came from out of the United States. Now, if you were wise about your anti-hyperinflation perspective, you would not buy a car that was made in 2025. That way, you're never paying for inflation. Any car that is a certified pre-owned vehicle from 2024, 23, any new vehicles from 24 that didn't get sold yet, if it's a vehicle that is predated 2025 and refuse to buy any vehicles that have experienced that $10,000 increase, I guarantee you all those vehicles are going to reduce their price by $20,000. And why do I say $20,000? Because the 2024 models were depreciated by $10,000 to $15,000 in order for you to sell them in 2025. So if your 2025 models are not selling in 2026, where 2025 and 2026, you have a surplus of vehicles for certain manufacturers that are not being sold, they are going to cut their losses and bring those damn prices back down. But as long as you want a car with no miles on it that ain't nobody ever sat in, then you're going to pay for the convenience of having a brand new vehicle that has the new car smell, with is a freaking air freshener that you can stick into an old damn car. Then as long as you're willing to pay extra money for the fact that you got it, especially when it starts becoming hard to get to, and you're willing to pay extra money because it's hard to get to. Same thing with Canada. Not all of the places in Canada are not selling alcohol. Most of the places in Canada are not selling alcohol. So the places in Canada that still selling American alcohol, they can charge triple for the same bottle of Jack Daniels because they can't find it nowhere else. The fact that you're willing to pay the cost to look like a boss because you're getting something that's exclusive, you're getting something that's rare, you're getting something that's hard to come by. Like the people who paid an extra $30,000 for the fucking Cybertruck when the Cybertruck was originally debuted at $79,000. Elon rose the price $20,000 to $99,000, and then said, so that we can put this little emblem on the side of the fucking truck that says Foundation Series. Now you give me an extra $30,000 and we ship you the truck today. Bro, that fucking car is 5.5, 7 years late. Fuck you mean I'm gonna pay $30,000 more to get it now? You should be shaving $30,000 off the vehicle because the damn truck is late. But then the bastard ain't got nothing that you said it was supposed to have on it. No autopilot, no bulletproof glass. The 30 times rolled steel can get breached with a 90mm bullet. So you can't tell. The frame bends. It can't hold weight. You can't use it on the construction site. They didn't do the tri-motor, right? So the tri-motor is not out. The dual motor is out, and the dual motor isn't the 500-mile motor. It's the tri-motor that had the 500-mile motor. So they're really only going about 150 to 300 miles empty. But if you do a full load on the bad boy, the bastard's only going 70 miles. But you still got to spend extra money on the supercharger to fast charge that fucker. Still got to wait 30 minutes to charge it up. When I could take a gas-powered Ford F-150, Dodge 2500, Dodge 1500, go to a gas station for 5 minutes, fill the tank, and not have to put gas in it for 2 more weeks, and do way more with that truck than what I can do with a Cybertruck. And those trucks cost, like most expensive ones that you find for the average individual, like $30,000 to $50,000. So why am I going to spend the money for 3 Dodge trucks or 3 Ford trucks just to get 1 Cybertruck that isn't even good enough to do what I wanted to do? And then because they didn't paint it, polish it, put any kind of metal coating on it, the bastard's going to have the rust on it from weathering. And that's before we start talking about how here in Florida, them some bitches blew up because of salt water from high water with the flood from the hurricane, burning people's houses down and stuff. Now you can't even insure the electric cars. This is what we pay for that causes hyperinflation. It's not the creation of dollar bills. Because if you understand that about 55 or 60% of Americans have switched over to digital currency not meaning cryptocurrency, digital currency meaning debit cards, credit cards, online purchases. Not very many people have cash in their pocket. Most of the people that's talking to me on the comments right now don't have $1,000 of cash in their house right now, much less $500 in their wallet right now. Don't mean they don't got 20 grand in the bank. But when is the last time you left your house with 500 cash dollars in your pocket talking about I'm only spending cash? So if they create a whole bunch more money, capital gains, it ain't gonna really do nothing to the economy. But if you start writing checks to a bunch of Americans that can direct deposit into their accounts, and now they have the digital monetary value of the paper money that they can go and spend, oh yeah, it's going to cause a lot of hyperinflation. Stephen was said 70% ICE related. Yeah, we're going to be talking about ICE in just a minute. I'm gonna get back on that. Jocelyn said Germany printed too much money in the 30s and hyperinflation cured their economy. That ain't the only thing that was when you start talking about Germany, there was a lot of things that required blonde hair and blue eyes that was really doing a bad deal to their economy. Okay, it wasn't just the money, because you got to understand, a paper money is exactly that, paper. That's it. It's only worth what other people want it for. If you tear it, it has no value. It's not the money that causes the hyperinflation. It's the greed of the people who have that paper, who want stuff that the people who have it are demanding large quantities of paper for it. So, I mean, it's not, again, I'm going to say the long-term effect is that when you put discretionary spending money in the hands of people who are financially irresponsible, they spend more money than they need to spend, doing things that they don't need to do, usually to impress people who could care less about them. And that stimulates the economy, which is the reason why Donald Trump was giving all that stimulus money to low-income individuals, because it stimulated they weren't going to keep that money and invest it. How many of y'all are following the dividend rotation strategy? We just sold International Seaway. We just sold Arbor Realty. We're getting into AG Mortgage, Real Estate Investment Trust. We're about to invest in the Orchid Island and AGNC, and we're literally trying to turn a couple $1,000s into a few $100,000 in a short period of time. We're talking about 168% returns, and we've been sitting over here doing this for the past couple months. How many people watching the show right now know anything about that? But most of us know where a good place to go to hang out, a good place to go to spend money, a good the latest Jordans that are being released, the 30-inch rims, the white wall tires. We know where to go to get entertainment. We know where to go to have fun. Some guys spend a bunch of money on entertaining women so that they can have female companionship. Some women spend a bunch of money on looking attractive so that they can attract men and spend a bunch of money on them to get that companionship. But the average individual could live at 30% of their standard of living, or 30% of their income. That could be their standard of living. And the other 70% could be invested where they would not be broke in 10 years. I showed y'all how two people come together. Most of us have a duo scenario where we're roommating with somebody, whether it's a relationship or a best friend or a family member, where we're roommating with somebody. We're putting multiple incomes together to survive. Most people are doing that in America. And the fact of the matter is that if more than one income is coming together and each one of them is above $40,000 and you're living a $50,000 a year lifestyle or $60,000 a year lifestyle, the difference could be thrown into stock options. And within 5 years of investing your money and reinvesting the principal and continuing to add to it with the difference that you don't need, you could be living comfortably at $60,000 to $62,000 a year, and within 10 years have $1 million in the bank and not have to work. You could quit working and live off of 15% interest, where you would be getting $150,000 a year off the $1 million that you have saved from not buying stupid shit. So hyperinflation is not because people make money. Hyperinflation is because once you hand money to somebody, they're going to be irresponsible for it. That's where hyperinflation comes from. But I really appreciate your ability to give me those facts. Special shout out to Jocelyn, because she knows what's going on when it comes down to the printing of money. But it wasn't the fact that they printed the money. It was the fact that once the money was printed, people took it and used it because they wanted stuff that they didn't necessarily need. Now, legal observers and the ACLU reported that the arrest that was occurring recently often occurred without judicial oversight. And that's what some of y'all were talking about earlier in tonight's show, which is raising concerns about the due process. Officials reports cited at least 44 people arrested at a single site, but advocates and witnesses estimate the total number detained across the city, which much higher, possibly between 70 and 80%, or 70 to 80 people in one day alone. The raids led to the cancellation of public events, closure of businesses, and significant drop in community activity as residents, both documented and undocumented, feared being swept up by ICE. And truth is that you had minorities. People like me would have been terrified to go outside because we already get snatched up just because we went outside and it's sunny outside. We ain't even got to do nothing. We have been stereotyped as suspect on merit alone, not even merit, on principle. You know, they just like, we suspect. So, you know, when you start seeing your homeboys getting snatched up, and that's really how this looks, your homeboy, because the Mexican that lives next door, the other individuals that you have, the African American individuals, Dominican Republican individuals, because you got to think about, Mexico is not the only people here undocumented. They're just the only ones we talk about. But you know, you got other individuals from other countries that got here, however they got here, and now they're finding everybody and they snatching everybody up because they call them undocumented because they're not registered citizens. But do you think that they're undocumented? Their name is somewhere, and these folks is going to go get them. Now, that means that as these people get snatched up, everybody else is afraid to go outside. And then you have some people who would have tried to stand their ground against the invasion, snatching up their kids, snatching up their parents, and that's going to lead to lethal force, which is going to make everybody else even more afraid to act and react to this situation. And you can't interfere with it, because if you interfere with it, you will be arrested for obstructing police duties, which they're going to identify that as obstructing justice. But everybody can agree on today's show that there's nothing just about what's going on. The aggressive nature of the raids, especially their scale and lack of judicial warrants, sparked widespread anger and immediate protests. So in some cases, these protests escalated to confrontations with law enforcement and federal agents, contributing to broader unrest in the city, which I thought was asinine. Not the confrontations with the law enforcement and the federal agents, but the rioting and the vandalism and the looting that occurred after that. Why is it that some people find it a ultimate opportunist moment to go and steal a TV, steal shoes, basically steal stuff that you don't need, that you couldn't afford to buy, because everybody's distracted about society being pissed off at what's going on? Then when you're looking at the looting and the rioting and the vandalism, you're not burning down police stations and spray painting cop cars. You're burning down your local mom and pop shop and spray painting your neighbor's car. And then you're overturning your friend's car. You're interfering with the public transportation system, stopping your kids from going to school. You're destroying the society that you live in, as if that's going to make a difference in what's happening in your society. I believe that your anger and aggression is misdirected. I'm not going to tell you that you should probably focus that vandalism and rioting and all of this stuff at your local law enforcement locations. But let's be real. When they say the old saying, eye for an eye, where you're supposed to be putting your anger and aggression is not the local stores that did you nothing, because they lost their employees today too. Your anger and aggression should be at the locations where they took all of your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers, your boss, your girlfriend, your kids. Your anger and frustration should be at the government facilities. So all the spray paint, vandalism, and looting should be at those government locations. It should not be at the local grocery store, the mall, the downtown mom and pop shops, the foreign run gas stations, because you guys know that a lot of the Exxons and Mobil Ones around the country are run by foreign individuals. They're non-American individuals with heavy accents, and they're the first people to be attacked when we have a race war going on, which is pretty much what we're dealing with right now, is somewhat of a race war. Anybody that's not an American is not welcome here, and anybody with the wrong complexion is also not welcome here. Bayside said, my problem is you're here in America waving Mexican flags and burning the American flag, but yet you're wearing $300 Jordans and enjoying to go to Starbucks, but yet you want to destroy where you live. I agree with Bayside. Why are you burning down your neighborhood when your neighborhood is not raiding your house? Your neighborhood is supposed to be protected. The people who are raiding your house caught a plane over. People who are raiding your house drove several hundred miles to get to you. The people who are raiding your house has been headed in your direction from the East Coast since February. So why are you burning down your neighborhood? Because when the feds leave your neighborhood, the people that you set on fire yesterday, my bad, bro, we cool now, right? That's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. You're attacking your friends and family, which you shouldn't be. So make that make sense for me real quick. Bayside said, Florida police officer said, if you're gonna loot in their town, I remember that, and threaten and throw things at the police department, you're signing your own death certificate. In other words, it's on site. Bro, Florida has had this position that if you're going to commit crime, stand your ground indicates that whoever commits a crime that it relates to trying to take something from somebody else or causing unnecessary harm to somebody else, you are asking to lose your life that day, because the police department has encouraged for years that it is on site. So if you attack a Floridian, it is on site. If you attack law enforcement, it is on site. Do you realize that their response time is between 10 and 45 minutes when you say to somebody shooting at somebody else? So unless there are some key words that you could throw out that'll make them come faster, they are expecting you to be wasted like a bad GTA skit before the police show up. And the report is going to be so-and-so did something, and the response was he got shot. Case closed. they not talking about you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have defended your Nah, they putting everybody down. That's the way it is. And it's crazy that we've got a special shout out to Pain and Suffering, because Pain and Suffering likes Pain and Suffering, which is why he's sitting here asking me what in the Stevie Wonder is this. I can tell you what in the Stevie Wonder is this. This is the blindness of justice. Talking about how shit ain't right. It doesn't make sense. And I'm actually going to be getting into some of the other scores of how this negatively impacts our existence, because I don't just cover chaos. I like to talk to you guys about the things that don't make sense and how it interferes with our ability to make money. So when we're talking about this, on June 6th, which was about 10 days ago, 2025, Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents conducted the high-profile raids in the cities, which led to the widespread protests, where some of the protests escalated in the riots and direct confrontation with law enforcement, especially near key government sites like Metropolitan Detention Center and Los Angeles City Hall. As the situation intensified, protesters gathered outside some surrounding government buildings, prompting law enforcement, including the Los Angeles Police Department, National Guard, and federal agents, to form protective lines and use crowd control measures such as smoke and pepper spray to secure access and ensure the safety of the individuals that were inside those government buildings. In several instances, the unrest made it unsafe for the government officials and workers to leave the premises, but they were never kept hostage, where people were talking about how government officials were held hostage in the building during a protest. Nah, you could have left whenever you wanted to. You might have got your ass whipped like Martin Luther King when he was walking down the street turning the other cheek, but you would have been able to leave whenever you felt like it. So these measures of them not having the sense of safety feeling effectively trapped them inside until law enforcement could disperse the crowds and restore order. So it wasn't that they were trapped in these buildings and they couldn't go anywhere, like they were held hostage. Nah, you could have came outside, you just didn't want to. The anxiety, though, that came from that, it's not coming from nowhere. It's rooted in very real and very documented history of immigration enforcement and the profound, often devastating impacts it has on people, families, and their hometowns. So the fear of situations like those described before is incredibly powerful, and this fear, when mixed with actual enforcement, can absolutely have real economic and social impacts. While the flashiest headlines might not always match up with confirmed events, the reality of stepped up immigration, they started laughing. He like, yeah, they could have went outside, they just would have got their ass whooped. The reality of stepped up immigration enforcement has undeniable, far-reaching consequences for Americans all over America. And this isn't about the one unconfirmed event, it's about a wider pattern of impacts. For example, Mayor Karen Bass enacted the curfew in response to several days of protests, the looting, and the vandalism following aggressive immigration enforcement actions. So the curfew initially covered a section of downtown bounded by the 510 and 110 freeways. So in that area, all hell broke loose. The curfew hours started at 8 p.m. and were later reduced to begin at 10 p.m. as the situation calmed. The curfew in downtown Los Angeles began on Tuesday, June 10th, which was about 6 days ago, and the city curfew is still being strictly enforced. That means that if you're out on the streets between 8 or 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., depending on the night, and without a valid reason, you could be arrested or prosecuted. Law enforcement isn't taking this lightly. They've already made dozens, even hundreds of arrests for curfew violations. Now, there are some important exceptions. If you're a resident heading to or from work, which means you're going to have to show some paperwork, be in uniform or some shit in the direct route from where you work from, which means where you coming from and where you going is questions you got to ask these days. You got to answer them damn questions. Remember when we was talking about, oh, you ain't got to tell them shit, you ain't got to show them nothing. Well, now you got to show them your real ID with the star on it. You got to tell them where you coming from, how long you was there, where you headed to, how long it's going to take you to get there. Because if not, they're going to take your ass to jail for being outside past curfew. So going out to the club ain't going to happen no more, not in California. And you have to prove. You can't just lie and say, oh, I'm going to work or I'm coming from work. You have to prove it. You seeking medical care, you've got to show that medical care is needed. part of public works or utility, you have to show that you work there. Credentials are going to be required. So public safety and emergency personnel will be allowed out. You guys can go and do what y'all want to do. First response individuals. If you're a delivery driver, you'll be able to drive around and do what you got to do, but you got to show, you're going to get pulled over a lot. But every time you get pulled over, you got to show them the delivery, show them location that you're going to, stuff to that effect. Basically, we're on COVID protocols, but it has not become a military state yet. So people that are experiencing homelessness who are staying in shelters within curfew zones are also specifically exempt from these rules, but you have to be in a shelter. I don't think that tents and cardboard boxes under overpasses constitutes shelters. So bottom line here is violating a curfew is a misdemeanor that could mean a fine of up to $1,000 and up to 6 months in jail or both. So you can either sit in jail for 6 months because your ass was out there doing something you got no business doing, or they could tax you $1,000, or they could tax you $1,000 after you get out of jail. So if you have a legitimate reason to be out, make sure you have proof of where you live or work. And for those concerned about our homeless neighbors, city officials have made it clear that the focus on preventing violence and property damage, not targeting people experiencing homelessness, especially those in shelters. However, folks who are unsheltered may still be approached by law enforcement, though the intent is not to penalize them. So if you're outside because you have no choice, you're sleeping on the sidewalk, you ain't trying to cause no trouble, you're less likely to get thrown in jail. But if you're part of the riot and you go back to your cardboard box, they are going to kick your cardboard box over, kick your ass, and take you to jail. Because you should have went home. If you ain't got no home, you should have been focusing on the home. You should not have been involved in that riot. If the riot hampers where you place your camp, move your damn camp. Okay? Because they're going to kick your door. They're going to kick open your cardboard box door. And if they don't burn your cardboard box to the ground, they're going to throw a bunch of water on it. That bastard ain't going to stand no more. They're going to fuck your shit up. And then they're going to put you into a 6-month stay in a place where you hopefully are going to come back from. Because when you think about how they were talking about getting rid of habeas corpus, anybody that ends up in the system while habeas corpus is enacted, you're not going to have a way out. Now, one of the first things we're seeing is the effect on the labor force with all of this terror that's going on. So think about the industries like the agricultural, construction, hospitality, and manufacturing. They are often relying heavily on immigrant labor, both documented and undocumented. When there's a threat of raids or when workers are actually detained and deported, businesses suddenly face critical shortages. So we've heard from farmers in California, for instance, who've reported large percentages of their workforce not showing up simply out of fear. That can mean crops left to rot and a hit to our food supply chain. This isn't new. Studies looking at past crackdowns show similar kinds of labor disruptions. This labor squeeze isn't just about unpicked crops or unpicked cotton. It means construction projects can stall. Restaurants can't find enough staff, and manufacturing output can drop. Businesses, especially the small ones that are the backbone of so many towns, then have to make tough choices, scale back, raise prices, or maybe even close up shop for good. Some economists figure that mass deportations could significantly shrink the GDP, and I've given you multiple shows over the past 2 months that showed you exactly how far the billions of dollars that we will lose out on based on what they're doing. Trump says that we're going to make 3 times more after we get rid of everybody. But until we get rid of everybody, we're experiencing a shortage, which means higher prices for all of us. And it's not just about a direct loss of workers. there's also a chilling effect that descends on communities where enforcement is aggressive or just rumored to be on its way. People get scared to go to work, to go shopping, to send their kids to school, or even get essential services like healthcare. Streets in shopping districts can become unusually quiet, not because raids officially close businesses, but because customers and workers are staying home. This fear-driven economic slowdown can hit immigrants heavily. Neighborhoods particularly harmed will also be impacted, which is impacting local tax money and the overall energy of the community. Reports from different cities have shown that even rumors of raids can cause a big dip in foot traffic and sales for local shops. The psychology tolls is huge. Studies have shown more anxiety, depression, and trauma in kids and adults in communities that have experienced raids or live under the constant threat of them. This typically used to happen in the low-income minority communities. Now it is happening all over the place. Welcome to our lifestyle, ladies and gentlemen. This fear isn't just for undocumented individuals, though. It hits mixed status families, individuals where some have citizenship, some are pending citizenship, and the children who you forgot to get the citizenship for. U.S. citizen kids with immigrant parents, and even documented immigrants who might worry about being mistakenly targeted or harassed. This constant worry can affect how kids do in school and the general well-being of a community, creating an atmosphere of disrupted and unstable environments. Access to healthcare can also suffer as people might avoid clinics if they're afraid of running into immigration authorities, which could make public health issues worse. This is true. You see on the movies where individuals who are doing things in the heat of the moment and then they get shot or stabbed or whatever, and they're like, no hospitals. And they want to go to this one guy under the oak tree who's doing all the medical treatment and stuff. Because if you go to the hospital, the hospital reports who you are to who's looking for you every time. While the hospital has a duty to revive you and stabilize you and put you back out on the street, they will hold you in recovery until the person looking for you comes and gets you. So you can't get sick and go to the hospital, because if you get sick and go to the hospital and you're wanted, they will find you at the hospital, which means that you will stay sick and avoid the hospital to avoid capture. This is an issue. The fallout from aggressive immigration enforcement and the fear that comes with it doesn't just stop at one town's border or within a single industry. It creates a ripple that spreads wider, affecting economy and society in broader ways. So think about the supply chain. When farming regions face labor shortages because of immigration crackdowns, it's not just the local farmers who feel it. The availability of fresh produce in your supermarket may be hundreds of or even thousands of miles away, and this can be impacted. You're going to go to the grocery store and certain stuff is no longer on the shelf. It didn't sell out. It just didn't get replenished. This could mean higher prices for everyone, especially if we're dealing with a higher demand for a lower production of services. Similar disruptions in construction can slow down the new development, affecting housing availability and how our infrastructure grows, which means that the rent will go up because the resources to renovate the apartment is not easily accessible, which means the cost to renovate that apartment will go up, which means the landlord is going to offset that price on the new tenants, which means when you move out of wherever you are, you're going to be paying higher prices to move into somewhere else. This is also going to have a negative impact on individuals who are trying to purchase houses, because wholesalers who are fix and flipping houses, they're going to buy those houses, spend a lot of money to fix those houses, and charge more for the houses to recoup their profits. The interest rates that are not stabilizing due to the high tariffs is going to have high interest rates upward of 7%, which means that you're going to have to be putting a larger down payment down on the houses, typically somewhere around 20%, 20 to 30% of the value of the house. So this is going to slow down people's ability to purchase houses, which is ultimately going to be a lower turnover of real estate, where it is still a seller's market balancing out and turning into a buyer's market, but not very many people can qualify to buy the way they used to because of the stigma of the high interest rates versus the high cost of the houses being sold. Special shout out to Braveheart. They're saying Democrats keep finding ways to raise taxes, but Democrats aren't really trying to raise the taxes. Democrats are trying to offer more benefits in a uniform fashion. Specifically, if a lot of people look at the communist model, where regardless of how much everybody works, we all get the same amount of resources, which means that there isn't a higher or lower class. Everybody's somewhere in the middle. Keep in mind, even in a communist model, that individuals that are in government situations still have favoritism of slightly more resources, but the average individual all has same access to the same quantity of resources. Democratic positions, typically, from my observation, is to provide more uniform resources to the lower income individuals. Lower income individuals is anybody not making $100,000 a year. So if you don't make $100,000 a year, the Democratic Party was trying to make sure that you had more health care for less, if not free, more education for your kids for less, if not free, more access to food assistance, because inflation is making it harder for you to buy food with the money that you make off of your job, increasing wages for lower income individuals, because working wage right now is almost $2,000 a month. And those of you that are making $2,000 a year are poor based on a statistical average. So Democrats are not really trying to raise taxes per se. However, Democrats did want to tax the rich the same way Reagan taxed the rich. And if I remember back in the day, they had taxed the rich 50%. If you tax the rich more than you tax the poor, you can fix the economic deficit in the economy and still be able to maintain uniformity. However, because the majority of individuals that are trying to keep money in their pockets are the Republicans, and the Republicans want to continue passing bills and laws and rules that allows for the rich to not pay taxes, putting the debt of the economy, the $30 trillion of debt, they're putting that on the backbones of the 99% or the 95% of the lower income individuals. Everybody who's working for minimum wage is paying for the resources that everybody who's making over 150, 200,000 a year don't got to pay for. Think about that. If you're making 60,000, 70,000 a year, you're primarily responsible for everything that's going on in this country. If you're making under 100,000 a year, you're primarily responsible for everything that's going on in this country. But if you're making $1 million a year, you could be taxed $0 a year. That's how it's set up. She says, hence congestion taxes in New York City. New York is rich, though. That's not. He said Democrats keep finding ways to raise taxes, hence the congestion in New York City. That's not. I'm going to disagree with you, Braveheart. It is not the Democrats that is raising the taxes. It is the need for more funds, because as Elon found almost $200 trillion, not 200 trillion, what was it, $200 billion that he found? Almost, it was $175 billion to be exact, that he found before he quit, of misappropriated money that the government was using. Those misappropriated funds is the reason why we're spending more money on taxation to cover the spread, because they're moving money to places that they're not supposed to move the money. Think about the multiple countries where they were sending billions of dollars every year to other countries solely to allow those countries or encourage those countries to accept the extradition of individuals that were being exiled out of our country. Those billions could have went towards stabilizing our economy. Another thing, I've seen this plenty of different times. When natural disasters happen in America, we're spending millions of dollars per week rebuilding other infrastructures in other countries around the world. Sometimes infrastructures we actually destroyed with our military, and we're rebuilding their society, but we're not spending billions of dollars in our own country rebuilding our own country. How many billions of dollars did the US government send to Florida after what happened in September? How many billions of dollars did the US government send to Louisiana when what happened in Katrina? How many billions of dollars did the US government send to California in January? Hold on, February, after California burned for 45 days. How much money did the US government send to California? Now, right after that, Donald Trump said, let's stop putting billions of dollars in the hands of people who don't deserve it. Now, I'm not an advocate for Donald Trump, but I am going to say that hashtag tax billionaires. I am not a fan of Donald Trump, but I am going to say that when he says stop giving money away, that was a good call. Because why the hell are you giving money to other countries just so that you can take the people who don't belong here? Bro, you should put those folks on a plane, and if you give them a parachute, let them land in their own country. That's what's going on. I don't care if their country will take them back. If you're extraditing them somewhere else, if you're deporting them somewhere else, it is not our problem. When the plane lands, you kick them down the stairs and take off. That's it. But you're giving them billions of dollars to accept people who are no longer welcome here. When the hell did that happen? I remember back in the pirate days when you wasn't welcome here, they put you on a little boat and just put you out in the middle of the water and let you figure it out yourself. Why are we paying people to take you in at the port? But we're not spending no money in our country like we need to fix the deficit that we're having here. And then, like you said, you want to talk about the Democrats taxing the people. Now, why the hell has America not established a scenario where we're not relying on electricity from Canada? Canada is taxing North American states 25% more because of the tariff retaliation. So you're paying more money on your light bill in New York and Manhattan and all these other areas that is receiving electricity from Canada because we outsourced, because it was cheaper. But why do we not have an infrastructure designed for us to produce enough electricity in-house where we don't have to rely on outsourced electricity? That's not the Democratic Party that's doing that. The Democratic Party is in office once out of every 3 terms, usually. More often than not, if you look at our history, more often than not, our government is run by a Republican Party more often than it's run by a Democratic Party. So let's not point fingers at political parties when we recognize that stupidity is nationwide. It's not just one political group that is the fault and blame of all the stuff that makes no sense in this country. Okay. And she said the gap between the rich and poor has grown a lot. It has. It's unfortunate. So many of these politicians are so out of touch anymore. It is common practice for the political party. Special shout out to Tree Hoarder. It is common practice that they're not in touch. And the reason why they're not in touch is because their standard of living is paid for. These motherfuckers get up every day. They got automatic bill pay. They got their check coming in on a regular basis. They got a fixed quantity of hours that they got to show up Monday through Friday. And that is all their life is about. What the hell is happening to their constituents on the other side of the country ain't got shit to do with their day-to-day operations. They might start their political campaign with how they're going to make a difference in their society. But you have to understand that once they've been in there for a couple of years, 2-3 years, their only agenda is to maintain their position in politics. That's it. Only when they're up for re-election do they re-campaign, hoping that they maintain their seat. But after they've maintained their seat, they don't give a shit what's going on with you. The lobbyists that are bribing them under the table to make decisions is what really fuels them to make the decisions that they make. If they want to get a bigger house, if they want to get a fancier car, if they want to go on a more expensive vacation, the lobbyists who paid them to do that. If they're trying to pay off back debt, they're trying to cover up a conspiracy where a family member done something it wasn't supposed to do. That is what motivates blackmail, extortion, bribery. That is what influences the American government. The dark money that I talked to you guys about back in September, that is what fuels the economy. That is what fuels the local government. Those people could care less what happens to anyone that is not in that room. They're going to say that they're doing it in the name of the people, but how many times have you been called by a government official to ask you what you think about what's going on in this country? How many times have you received an email from a government website asking you of your general opinion of what is going on in this country? How many times have they done a press conference asking you if you like what they've done so far? How's my service? How many times? I can't remember a time where a politician has ever done a press conference and said, do you like what I've done so far? No. They don't ask you your opinion. They tell you, this is what I've done. This is what I will do. And what they actually do isn't always what they will do. But if what they say they're going to do makes you applaud and donate money to their cause, they've achieved their objection, which was get money out of the people. Because think about this. Why the hell are they doing a campaign where you have to donate money so that they can be elected, so that they can tax you, so that they can, because the president gets a paycheck too. You know that, right? The president and the vice president gets a paycheck too. So why am I paying for your campaign? Why am I paying you to interrupt my TV and live streaming and everything else with ads to convince other people to give them money? Y'all got to think about that for a second. And the people who donate so much money to the political campaigns, I have not found that donating to a political campaign is a tax exempt scenario. So why the hell are we donating money to political campaigns? Y'all did how much money did Donald Trump raise? $5 billion, $5 billion, $5 trillion that he raised in his political campaign. Now, let me ask y'all something real quick. While y'all up here, like and subscribe, follow me on all these social media channels that y'all see me on. I'm going to ask y'all a question real quick. All of the people who donated money to a political campaign for 2024. Now, why the hell y'all didn't put that $5 billion, $5 trillion into the goddamn educational system and got a goddamn tax write-off off of that shit? Because if you understood that schools are funded by the government, these are nonprofit entities. So while y'all complain about public school, pay your last dollar for private school to get the same education that you get from a public school. If y'all took y'all damn money and donated it to the damn school and got a damn receipt and gave that to the damn government, instead of you giving it to a political party, if you gave it to your damn local school, your school would have computers, books, labs, security, everything that you need for better buses, better bus drivers. Y'all would have everything that y'all need to give y'all kids the same quality of education that they get from the damn private school. The only difference is that the private school is a business. You're not going to get a tax write-off. So is your child's education that important to you, that they learn something, or that they attend a prestigious school where they're being bullied because they're on a financial aid track because you can't afford to get your kid into the damn school, just so that you can say that your kid graduated from the same school as Barack Obama and Martin Luther King? Why? You know, some of the best attorneys in the country came from a damn public school and a community college. Some of the best doctors in the world came from, look at Benjamin Carson, freaking brain surgeon. He did not go to the best college in the country in order to make it to be a brain surgeon. He just knew what he needed to know and did what he needed to do. Y'all got to understand that wasting money on prestige, that's the reason why hyperinflation happens. But think about this, though. You spend so much money on prestige, that's the reason why college is so damn expensive. You see how Harvard started opening its doors to anybody who doesn't have a $200,000 a year income. So that's every fucking body. Harvard just became a goddamn community college. Harvard, one of the most prestigious schools in the country next to Yale. Literally. I'm going to answer your question, Jocelyn, in just a second. Literally just said anybody whose family does not make $200,000 a year can get a free education here. Now, Harvard, private college, doing the exact same thing as most of your community colleges, where if you was putting that money into your community colleges, you would have more resources. You would have bigger community colleges. But guess what? Guess what's happening here, y'all? This is that Star Trek environment. Notice in Star Trek, nobody had to clock in for nothing. You showed up, you put in your whatever, you got off, you got whatever you needed. You only had what you needed. There was no currency exchange. They built stuff on merit. They built stuff on faith. They showed up, they made promises, and that's all you had. It was a communist model. The exact same thing that's happening with the community colleges. If more people paid into their community colleges and paid into the community schools, look at they got rid of the Department of Education, so nobody is allocating extra funds to school anymore. So if you don't pay for your community college, your child gonna be dumb. So why are you not putting money there, but you'll put money into a political party? Make it make sense. But if you think about the billions of dollars, all this man had to do was put up a link online and say, give me money and I'll make America great again. How great is America over the past 6 months, y'all? We're on the 6th month of the year, right? July is the 6th month of the year, right? And so far, we've had 500,000 people unemployed, more so than your average unemployment rate. And everybody is terrified because the feds is kicking in houses and snatching people up and running on people's jobs and snatching people up. And we just 6 months into the year. How great do you feel your country is right now today, where you have to show your ID and show your whereabouts so that you don't get put into a black site where you can't make phone calls and nobody can hear you scream? How great has it been so far? I just want y'all to answer that question for me real quick. Now, Jocelyn said, did you see the military budget? I already covered a show on the $600 billion military budget for the Golden Dome of America and the 30-foot tall, I do believe it's between 30 and 75-mile long wall that they're building, which is really just a bunch of steel beams with gaps in between them so that AR-15s can shoot outside the wall kind of thing. That's pretty much what it looks like to me. I've seen it. I've talked about it. I've covered I covered how he's going to spend $600 billion on military after Elon Musk just uncovered $175 billion, which means that Elon Musk barely covered less than 1/3 of what Donald Trump is about to spend. But people said that Kamala Harris was wasteful with her decision to give all of the minorities that are descendants from slavery, which is anybody that was born 1965 or before, $1 million. Do you know what would have happened if you would have given probably 20% of the American population that's over the age of 65 enough money to retire? Motherfuckers would have paid off all their back debt, bought themselves a house, bought themselves a car, and left whatever they didn't spend to the people that was directly up under them when they died. That's all that would have happened. You would have stimulated the fuck out of real estate if you would have gave all of them 65 plus people $1 million a person to buy whatever the hell they wanted to buy. You would have stimulated the fuck out of the economy. You would have caused massive inflation in a short period of time, but it would have offset. I mean, worst case scenario, we would have had so much more abortion, but nobody would have got kicked out of the country. We would not be losing agriculture. We would not have been losing a large quantity of our manual labor infrastructure, but people complain that she didn't have the right forethought. That's why she didn't get put in, right? Now, since more than 70% of the population voted for Donald Trump, both men and women are responsible for this man being in office, because there's about 49.9% of population that are men. There are ideally more women than men in this country. On average, it is roughly a 1-to-1 basis, but to get more than 70% votes, more than 50% of the females voted for this man. So everything y'all don't like about what's happening right now, y'all asked for this. Y'all asked for this. The LGBTQ community, which is roughly 15% of the economy, y'all asked for this because y'all voted Republican. Y'all asked for what y'all are going through because y'all thought that this was going to do something better for I don't know who, because if you don't make $100,000 a year, if you don't really make $168,000, because he said that he was going to do 15% for everybody less than 168,000 and 30% for everybody above 168,000, which is a 2-tier tax system. But he said that he was going to have tax deductions for corporations and businesses. So anybody that's making over $168,000 should have a corporation or an LLC of some sort. Everybody else, this shit wasn't made for y'all. He put up tax deductions and tax breaks for individuals who were doing high investment yields. So people who are investing in crypto, stocks, Bitcoin. So I'm talking to you guys about every week. I'm going to be talking to y'all about it again tomorrow, about ways to move money in and invest in stocks and flip your money and make money for you. And he said there's going to be massive tax breaks for high dividend distributions for investments. So how many of y'all are living at 90% of your income and not investing in shit right now? He ain't did this for y'all, but y'all voted for him. Y'all voted for him because you wanted to have that Republican mentality. Y'all voted for him because y'all want to be the red team. Y'all voted for him because, you know, of somebody telling you should vote Republican. But if your ass is broke, you should not have voted for Republican. If you live from paycheck to paycheck, you should not vote Republican. If you do not have an inheritance, you should not have voted Republican, because this shit don't benefit you. And I talk to y'all every week about how things are changing and how it is negatively impacting the world. And that is offset on you and me. It affects all of us. So I tell y'all every week about ways that we can adapt to this, because we can't change it back. Billionaires are making billionaire decisions. The rest of us just got to deal with it. He promised a lot of middle class. He gonna give you some middle class. You know how he's gonna give you middle class? He's gonna do away with the upper rich, or not upper rich, the lower rich class, the lower upper level, make that the middle class. And then the middle class is poverty, because even though government assistance stops at $30,000, the poverty line is upward of $50,000 to $65,000 a year right now. So that is something y'all need to think about real quick. Special shout out to D. Lewis Turner. He said, heard Vance, the one with the Family Feud where everybody was slaughtering one another, and he wrote a book and bought most of the copies of his book, had that charity that didn't do nothing for nobody, but he pocketed a bunch of money. That Vance buying up farmland. So let's see what these mega do when no farm workers to bring in the food. Trump's only for the rich, like the racism, thinking he could just help them. He's a liar, bro. When he was over there selling folks them golden aluminum foil wrapped shoes, I was looking at people who was paying $900 for them shoes. Like, what the hell is y'all thinking? He over there in black churches and clapping hands, and he putting on a front. But I'm sitting over here thinking, what are y'all thinking? What are y'all thinking? Because gaining the black vote, the minorities are only minority in authority, not minority in population. The largest group of individuals is African American people in this country. So if you gain the black vote, you win. But the poor vote doesn't mean that the country is going to be rich now. It might if he makes enough business moves in time, 10, 20 years from now. But over the next 5 years, a lot of us are going to suffer. And I mean, racism is going to be worse now. Bayside said he's going to this. Yeah. Racism is going to be worse now. Racism is going to be worse because people are going to be snatching other people off the sidewalk. People going to be calling a hotline, reporting people to get snatched off the sidewalk. Karen going to be putting in a whole lot of work because she going to be trying to frame folk into being illegal immigrants and getting them snatched up just because she don't like what you're doing. So y'all got to be careful when y'all out there with Karen now. These situations ain't going to be as nice as they used to be back in the day. It's not what we thought we was getting ourselves into when some people voted the way they voted. That's not what we're going to have right now. The parts of Los Angeles and Long Beach, which are vital for national and international trade, have pointed out that slowdowns in their activity for any reason, including labor issues, can cost billions in local revenue and thousands of jobs. So here goes even more unemployment. You got to understand, I think $4.9 billion was the GDP of California by itself. Okay. California is, I think, the largest state in the country. The largest budget in the country. And they're doing a lot of import export. Then there's the hit to overall economic activity and investment. When a large number of workers and consumers are living in fear, they change how they behave with money. They tend to save more, which they should have been doing in the first place, and spend less on things that aren't essential, and might think twice about long-term investments or starting a new business. And this kind of pullback in spending can put a damper on local economies, and if it widespreads enough, could contribute to slower growth regionally or even nationally, where some studies even suggest that policies restricting immigration can actually slow down job creation. Undocumented immigrants contribute billions in taxes each year, and if they're removed from the economy, that means lots of lost revenue for federal, state, and local government. They better get that shit from OnlyFans. That's what they better do. They better do like Ukraine and start taxing OnlyFans so that they can get what they trying to get. DeLewis says, who is that? Padilla should understand how it feels to be handcuffed and thrown on ground. Bro, I personally believe right now that every U.S. American needs to know how it feels to have a spaz shotgun shoved in their face, slammed into the dirt, mud, puddle of water, gravel, and hands forced behind their back so that they can understand how it feels to be on the receiving end of "that's not fair." A lot of people don't know what it's like to have their face mashed into the hood of a hot car, talking about they asked for it. The reason why there are laws to protect criminals is because there's a level of inhumane even for the inhumane. And you have to understand that not everybody is guilty, and the regular occurrence, because we have a very high percentage of individuals that are actually innocent, and they are treated as if they're guilty until they're proven innocent. And there's no compensation or reciprocation of any kind when the way they were treated turns out to be they had the wrong guy. It was a misunderstanding. You got to understand. You traumatize this person for life. They're going to have to pay for their own therapy. You're not even going to cover the cost of therapy, but you beating their ass. And then when you finish with that, they're supposed to treat you with respect, as if they're not afraid that you're going to beat their ass again. y'all need to know what that feels like. Everybody needs to know what that feels like. He's DeLewis says, blacks, especially black men, have been going through this for ages, and he's right. Jimmy says diversity voters that voted for the government played themselves. I agree with you. Bayside agreed with you, bro. A lot of people can't break the law. You know how many laws we break on a regular basis, bro? Me and a buddy of mine was on a show last year. We were going over a couple times out of the year. We were talking about some of the most ridiculous laws that were created in this country that are still in effect. You know that when they create a law, just because it's not being enforced doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that nobody cares about it. So littering. Every time you've ever thrown trash on the ground, every time you've thrown a cigarette on the ground, every time you've dropped a wrapper or something and let the wind take it, you should have had consequences for that. Every time that you've run a red light and didn't get a ticket for it, there should be consequences for that. If they really enforce the laws 100% of the time, there's a lot of times you're supposed to be sitting in jail for stuff that nobody ever follows up on, specifically because there's too many laws in this country. There's too many rules in this country for any one law enforcement agent or agency to know all of the laws, to be able to enforce all of the laws. Here's one real quick before we move on. You know that it is treason to spit on American soil. So every time you was feeling sick, every time you had a loogie, every time you had something stuck in the back of your throat and you and spit on the ground, you was supposed to be put in a federal prison in a black site and never to be seen again. So just think about that when you say that a lot of people don't break laws. Rethink your position, Sean. A lot of people don't get caught breaking laws, and a lot of people are allowed to break the laws, which is why our president has 34 felonies that was confirmed and never prosecuted on. And he says only a leftist would complain. That's not true. Anybody who's ever been fucked over would complain. Arancia girl says Christmas is canceled for 2025. I told my daughters already. They said they understand we don't need more things when we can't pay for food and utilities. Woo! I love how blacks think they are the only ones that cops mess with. No, they be beating everybody ass. You got to understand. I said racism is not as big these days as social classism. So a majority of people in low income communities are getting their ass whooped across the board. It's not just black people for being black. Some people are just people who are too poor to afford a lawyer getting treated like shit. And now you've got immigrants being treated like shit, and they're being treated like shit by people who used to get treated like shit. So I don't understand, if you've ever been on the receiving end of being treated like shit, why you decided to turn coat and start treating other people like shit. You should have learned from your own personal experience and show some empathy to the person who's being treated like shit, because you didn't like being bullied when you was being bullied. So why are you becoming a bullier? I don't understand that. But he says the difference between all this nonsense that's coming out of your mouth is it's an American who dropped that trash. It's an American who did this or not. Right. Okay. So I love the way you think, Sean. First and foremost, yes, Americans did put these individuals in this position for this trash to happen. But truth is, though, I'm speaking facts. I'm coming off of the research and information, where you're coming off of personal appearance, personal perspective. And I personally, I don't have to agree with what you have to say to understand that, yeah, you're going to hate, and haters are going to hate, and I expect you to hate. But the truth is that what I'm saying is the economy is being fucked over by what's going on right now. It is short-term disarray, according to Donald Trump, that is going to have long-term benefits, according to Donald Trump. So where am I wrong about what I'm telling you? You can't point out a scenario where I'm not telling you the truth. You might not want to believe it. You could be in denial, and I completely understand that, but doesn't change the fact that what's going on right now really is going on. He says, do you even understand how bad it is to let people come through your borders and not even vet them at all, especially when there's 10 to 12 million? Do you realize that's been instances? There's been instances where a Chinese, hold on, he's got more, come through, set up an illegal biolab, and was studying some of the most deadliest viruses out there. And he was doing it under the direction of the CCP. Try this, Sean. You know how the towers got destroyed back in 9/11 of, I think it was 2005, and the American government is watching how people come in with passports, because those terrorists that blew up the Twin Towers, they came in with government approved documentation, and those individuals took government approved flight classes to fly a plane without ever learning how to land a plane. And those government approved individuals took those planes and crashed them into buildings and killed millions of people, or hundreds of people. Now, just because an individual came here illegally doesn't mean that they're going to do wrong. And just because they came here legally doesn't mean they're not going to do wrong. The fact of the matter is that our infrastructure is founded off of the 13 million manual labor workers that came here unlawfully. The same way we outlaw prostitution, but prostitutes make a ton of money and they spend a lot of money on taxes. Just because it's wrong don't mean the company ain't benefiting from it. That's one of the reasons why Ukraine took adult sex workers and taxed them 50% on top of what they're being taxed to support their military. The issue is terrorism is going to occur. Violence is going to occur. Bad people are going to do bad things. You're talking about the people who came from out of the country doing bad things. Why don't you talk about the Americans that are doing human testing without approval? Why don't you talk about the Americans that are kidnapping people without approval? Why don't you talk about the Americans that are blowing up buildings and causing chaos in this country? The mass shootings from people who had registered firearms, the mass shootings from people who took registered firearms from their family members and shot up the school and shot up the election, and did the guy's father, he took the guy's father's gun and shot at the president. Did the owner of the gun get held responsible for allowing the gun to leave the house? Does the owner of the gun, when a kid takes a gun to the school and go and shoot at school, does the owner of the gun get held responsible for allowing the gun to leave the house? You have to understand that when somebody takes the gun wasn't properly secured, and there's supposed to be consequences by law if the gun is not properly secured, because in most states, your gun is supposed to be heavily fortified in a location until use where it can only be accessed by authorized personnel. So when you start talking about your rant about how people are coming in from other countries and they're terrorizing our country, we're terrorizing ourselves. And then we're going to use this facade that it's in the interest of government safety. Bro, we don't protect our own borders. First of all, a plane can come in that is not Delta Airlines, land in a private landing strip and go to a private hangar, and then get into a private vehicle and drive onto private American soil and do whatever the fuck they want. We have docks everywhere on the shores of our country that leads to water, that leads to the ocean, where boats of all sizes can show up and not be checked by the U.S. Marshals. Now, I can tell you that if America started saying, oh, we're going to put a government personnel on every boat dock in America, some people's backyard would have government feds in their backyard making sure that whatever boat stops there gets checked. Y'all would say that's fucked up, that's doing too much. But Sean, you got to understand, you're making it seem like because the people didn't fill out paperwork that they're going to destroy the country, when Italian mobs have been organized crime in this country for the last 100+ years. We don't need illegal immigrants to destroy our country. All we need is a purge day. We could do it to ourselves. We can fuck ourselves over. We don't need illegal immigrants to go. And we're not running out of space neither, because with 4 billion people over in Asia, that has less space and more people than what we've got here in America. There is absolutely no reason why we don't got enough space for everybody. We just don't like to share shit. The capitalism model is to capitalize off of the backs of the stupid, the poor, and the lazy. That's what the capitalist model is. So if you're desperate enough, if you're lazy enough, or if you're dumb enough, you're going to spend the money that we need you to spend in order to make the profit that we need to make so that we don't have to work hard. That's the American dream, not working hard. Okay? Not having a struggle to build a legacy where our children don't have to struggle. I'll struggle so my kids don't have to struggle. I'll struggle so my grandkids don't have to struggle. But that's all the American dream is about. It ain't got shit to do with going to America and getting an American citizenship. It's just coming here and not having to suffer no more, not having to have a hard knock life no more. Now, how many people live in America right now can say that from birth till today that they do not have it hard in this country? Right? Think about what you're saying, Sean. Bayside says, Sean Black, absolutely know that other people, cops, mess. It all depends on the demographic. Right. So just like I was saying, he says, bruh is disingenuous. Okay, you could say that. You could say that. I don't really argue with that. He says, doesn't matter if it's an American, they're American. There's a difference when it's an illegal who's not even supposed to be here. No, there's no difference between an illegal immigrant and a legal immigrant if they're paying taxes, buying stuff, selling stuff, setting up businesses, spending money, stimulating the economy. There is no difference outside of whether or not they registered after they got here versus not registering before they got here or whatever. He said, you can't let 20 million unvetted immigrants in this country not knowing if they're terrorists, rapists, murderers. They need to come like they're supposed to the legal way. Hold on, Sean. How does that stop the millions of rapists and murderers and terrorists that were born and raised in America? How do you vet them? Where the active shooters, where do they get their fucking guns from? They buying them from somewhere. If they're not stealing them from somebody who they know got guns. So how is vetting people who've been here for 20 years going to change that? Now, yeah, you can create rules and regulations that you start vetting people. But how does removing the 13 million people that's already been here for the past couple decades, how does removing them from the country change anything? Because guess what? Guess what? While I'm covering today's show, I just want you to understand, Sean, the rioting and looting, so the theft, the vandalism, and ultimately what is one step away from being considered terrorist activity from American citizens, not the immigrants that got snatched up, not the undocumented people that got taken from their jobs and their homes. People who were born and raised here, who have citizenship, are burning the country to the ground because they're pissed off that you took their non-American homie without a warrant. So again, your argument is invalid because some of the most dangerous people in this country were born here. And some of the most dangerous people in this country will still be here after you eject 13 million people who stimulated billions of dollars of our economy. So your argument does not hold in comparison to the facts and statistics. Bayside said, Arcura, you're just being financially responsible and honest to your kids. I agree with that. Sean, what about the 300,000 kids that are missing that most likely are being sex trafficked? Because that's one of the things that happens when you just let people through the border. Well, Sean, what do you think about the hundreds of thousands of kids that were left in that Walgreens parking lot in fences while their parents were being deported out of the country? What do you think about that? Talking about traffic. What happened to them kids? Do you think those hundreds of thousands of kids got adopted out with the hundreds of thousands of millions of American babies that are born every year that are living in foster homes until they're 24? What do you think happened to all them children that were living in a parking lot for months, fenced in like animals, like stray dogs? What do you think happened to those kids? And they were treated that way by Americans. He said, 2022 estimates and ITEP report estimated that in 2022, undocumented immigrants paid nearly 100 billion in federal, state, and local taxes. Okay. And the CBO estimates that by fiscal year 2034, the outlays for benefits provided to the immigrants in the surge population and their children will total $177 billion. So in 2022, undocumented immigrants paid $100 billion in federal taxes. And you're saying that by 12 years later, it will cost $77 billion more for them to be here. I think they're paying their way. So they paid $100 billion in 2022, and they will cost us $177 billion in 2034. You're not matching up your argument here, buddy. Because had they cost us $177 billion in 2022, then I would be able to say, well, you know, we're spending more money than we're making off of them. But then ask yourself, how many Americans go and get them a disability check so that they don't got to work? Remember, from the late 80s through the early 2000s, where majority of the low-income women were getting on welfare, babies making factories where they were just living off of the government between child support and child subsidies. And these are American women where they did nothing with their lives and had like 10 kids and was getting paid a check per child, where their standard of living was covered. Section 8 housing started there. Section 8 housing wasn't for homeless. Section 8 houses were for low-income families who couldn't afford to go to work and take care of the kids and stuff. And these are Americans. There are people who take advantage of the system. He says the reason we don't talk about Americans is because we're too busy worrying about these people that we don't even know who they are. We shouldn't be paying attention to them. So basically, we have enough of our own people to worry about. We don't need to worry about people that ain't supposed to be here. So we shouldn't be trying to get rid of them, right? And are you saying we have a lot of problems, so the last thing we need is other problems? No, I'm saying we have a lot of problems, and the last thing we need is to start picking on people that don't fit the mold simply because they're different. That's what I'm saying. Duh. Now, that is the dumbest argument I've ever heard. Exactly. I told you that's the dumbest argument I've ever heard. So there's Americans that can break laws. Oh my God, what a revelation. Exactly. So what is the difference between Americans breaking laws and non-Americans breaking laws? Universally speaking, a law is a law. And if nobody's going to follow the law, fuck the law, right? So why are you going to take action against one group of people for breaking the same laws that another group of people is going to break? That's arbitrary, and arbitrary is subjective, and subjective is not uniform. And a lack of uniformity is a lack of equality in the American dream, isn't it? He says, so if you have 3 kids and you can't even pay for them, do you go ahead and adopt 5 more? Well, here's a better question, Sean. Here's a better question, Sean. If you got 3 kids and you're living in a state where you can't afford to pay for them, do you move to a state that is cheaper, that has better jobs, where you can make more money to take care of your kids? Or do you stay in a state where you can't afford to pay for your kids and live in a cardboard box with your kids? If you're living in a city, in a state that has too much violence, and you don't want your family to get hurt or killed during that violence, do you stay in that city, in that state? Or do you move to a city that has less violence? You move to a state that has less violence, where your kids will be safer. Think about that. Now, that takes all immigrant and non-immigrant off the table. If they left from an area that was less profitable for their family, that was more dangerous for their family, and they came to a place that was less dangerous for their family, that was more profitable for their family, that's what the fuck you're supposed to do as a damn parent. Then you're going to tell me that they're wrong for doing that. Then what are you trying to say? Oh, well, would you take on 5 more kids? Well, why would you take children from somebody who was taking care of their children just because you don't like how they got here? Because if they were paying for their own kid, now you done fucked up their family. Now the rest of us got to pay for their kid till their kid is grown. What makes sense about that? He said Sean should be worried about the Asians. They're buying up Americans and all the farms. You ain't lying. There was and is more whites on welfare than any race. Is it? Special shout out to Day Lewis Turner. He said, if you can feed your kids, how can you move? Oh, if you can't feed your kids, how can you move? Bro. Okay, that's a good question. If you can't feed your kids, how can you move? Well, if you can't afford to stay here, usually what poor people do is they just stop paying bills. And then before they're evicted, they take all of their money that they can gather, all of their stuff, get in a U-Haul truck, and they drive somewhere else and start over. Because evictions are localized in the city and state that the evictions happen in. So if you get evicted in California, you can move to Georgia and start over. You can get evicted in Nevada and move to Texas and start over. So, and typically you have to, in order to be evicted, you have to not pay your rent for at least 60 days. And then the eviction process starts on the 90th day. And if you contest the eviction process, you could potentially prolong the eviction for another 30 to 90 days before they effectively put you out, which means that you can live there for free for 3 to 5 months, which allows you to save money on rent and put that money together to get you a mode of transportation to get the fuck out of Dodge and then go to a cheaper city that doesn't cost as much. That's how you do that. Now, the conversations around the due process and civil liberties also get louder during times of increased enforcement. So we often hear from civil liberty groups who raise concerns about arrests made without a judicial warrant for a civil immigrant, for civil immigration violations, and the conditions are held in and whether they can get legal help. So these worries can make communities trust law enforcement even less, meaning people might be less likely to report crimes or cooperate with the police, which isn't good for public safety. Now, the very way a community functions can change. Places like churches, schools, and community centers, which are usually hubs of support and togetherness, might see fewer people and folks avoid public spaces. This weakens social bonds and can leave already vulnerable people feeling even more alone. The constant stress of potential separation takes a massive toll on families, especially children, affecting their mental health, education, and what their future might look like. So, what's the total understanding that people are talking about with the nation paralyzed and an economy collapsing? Now, the reality is, based on what we can verify right now, is more complicated. We're not seeing the entire national economy instantly collapsing just because ICE raid a few dozen homes, like some of the more extreme stories might suggest. But what is clear is that certain communities, specific industries, and vulnerable groups of people are facing major economic hardships, labor crises, and deep societal disruptions that directly tie to the immigration enforcement policies and the fear they create. So these aren't just isolated incidents. They're connected problems that, if they continue or spread, pose serious risks to economic stability and social well-being in many parts of the country. Beyond all the economic numbers and policy talk, there's an undeniable human cost. Can you imagine being a child terrified that your parents might not come home from work, or a small business owner who's poured everything into their dream only to watch their staff disappear and their customers vanish overnight, all because of fear? And one quick side note, what if you were the boss and you got took? Now, how do the employees feel that their paycheck is no longer accessible because their employer is no longer in the country? Chris says, so you're saying it's better to save all your money for 3 months so you can move instead of buying food for them, buying food in them 3 months. No, I'm saying that what low-income individuals would do is potentially, if they can't afford to pay for all the bills, they'll just stop paying bills. They'll still buy food. They'll still pay for transportation. They'll still go to work, but they'll stop paying for things that they just can't afford. Like they'll stop paying the rent, but they'll keep paying for the light bill. They might stop paying the light bill and let the lights go a couple of months, only pay half on the bill because they can get an extension if they only pay half on the bill. And eventually, when they get ready to wrap things up and move out, whatever they did not spend on basic needs because they couldn't afford to pay for everything, they could put all that stuff together and pack up and get out of here. And it happens a lot of the times. And it's reflected upon people's credit scores. When individuals with a 500 or lower credit score, individuals who have charged a bunch of things off, they charge a lot of things to their credit cards. And then when they don't charge things to their credit cards, they just stop paying for stuff altogether. And then they just walk out. Basically, I said, Chris, stop it. Of course, you're going to always feed your kids first. Come on, man. As a human being, we're all capable of making more money. We are, and a lot of us tend to make changes in our budget. Look, these aren't just made up scenarios. They're what people are actually living through in communities affected by aggressive enforcement and low income. Workers who've been here for decades, contributing to their local economies and raising families, suddenly find themselves detained, their lives thrown into chaos. These are the people who did everything right except for get citizenship. And you have to understand that these families still get torn apart, sometimes leaving U.S. citizen children in really tough spots, dealing with anxiety, depression, and real hardship because their non-U.S. citizen parents got to get out of the country. The fear is everywhere, described by community leaders and residents, and sometimes something you can almost touch, something that changes everyday life, is something that you actually start feeling impacted by. People avoid driving. They skip doctor's appointments. They keep their kids at home from school. This creates a kind of shadow population living on the edge, not able to fully be a part of society or get the help they need. The stress of being constantly on guard has even been linked to health problems like heart issues and making chronic conditions worse. In towns that have seen major work site raids, like those in Mississippi back in 2019, where hundreds were arrested, and poultry plants, at the poultry plants, the impact lasted for years. Those events left deep scars. Families struggled and are still struggling with lost income, legit legal fights, and the trauma from being separated. Community trust gets damaged, and the long-term effects on kids' development and well-being are a huge worry. So these are stories about hardworking people, about families just trying to build a better life, whose stability is shattered by enforcement actions that often target folks with no criminal record other than their immigration status. So Chris and Sean, that is the biggest problem that we're talking about here. We're not talking about the felons. We're talking about the non-felons, where the only thing wrong was their immigration status. The economic math of labor shortages and business closures is built on these individual stories of fear, uncertainty, and losses. The issues around immigration enforcement is economic impact and community well-being that are definitely complex, and they stir up a lot of strong feelings. So what do you think about these policies that affect local economies and people's living situations in these economies? I want to make sure that you guys continue to share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. And if you find that this kind of deep dive valuable to your overall objective, I want to make sure that you please think about continuing to subscribe and hitting those notification bells so that you don't miss out on some of the future investigations, because we're going to be following up on this. And the idea of a dangerous breaking point is right at the heart of the anxiety. I want you guys to recognize that all of the anxiety about aggressive ICE raids, while as we've talked about it, a full-blown nationwide economic collapse directly caused by these actions is what we're seeing right now. The question still is, what are the long-term risks if these enforcement trends keep up or get even more intense? And are some communities already at their breaking point? Economists and public analysts talk about several potential long-term problems. If key sectors like agriculture and construction keep facing labor shortages, it could mean we produce less here at home, relying more on imports, and possibly see higher food and housing costs for everybody. Noting that if we're going to be getting more stuff from overseas, we're going to be experiencing more tariffs. Bayside says, not to mention Israel bombing Iran, causing more anxiety throughout the world, which is going to support Donald Trump's mission to build the Golden Dome of America so that we're not getting bombed over here. Some studies suggest that restricting immigration can actually hurt innovation and long-term wage growth when you recognize that most of the EBW NI2s are individuals that are coming over here with master's degrees and PhDs and joining our tech industry. And you're complaining about how some of these folks came over without paperwork, but they're still involved in our manual labor infrastructure. Losing the tax money from a big chunk of the workforce can strain state and local budgets, affecting money for public services like law enforcement, fire support, ambulances, and other such things, including the educational factor that nobody's paying into. That chilling effect on local economies, if it really takes hold, could send affected communities into a downward spiral. Fewer businesses means fewer jobs, less tax money, and a less lively community. This could lead to some areas shrinking in population, not necessarily becoming a ghost town overnight, but a slow draining of economic life. And the social fabric gets stressed. An atmosphere of fear and mistrust can really undermine how well a community sticks together and how effective public safety efforts are. The long-term psychological impact on a whole generation of kids growing up under the shadow of deportation is a major concern for teachers and healthcare workers. There's also an ongoing discussion about where federal money goes, since 175 billion of it wasn't going to the right place. Spending more on immigration enforcement, detention, and deportation costs a lot. Critics say those resources could be used differently, while supporters stress how important it is to enforce immigration laws. We've seen recent reports. He says, Xander, it looks like we're going to have to buy our doomsday bunker. Bro, I'm digging ditches. I'm digging ditches miles deep, bro. Everybody who's anybody is going to own a Resvani before the end of this situation, because if they don't, they're going to be really regretting it. Now, we've seen reports indicating a big jump in ICE arrests and a push for even higher daily arrest numbers. So they're talking about meeting a higher quota, which suggests enforcement efforts are ramping up. You're going to see a lot more law enforcement on the streets. So those of you who do stuff that y'all ain't got no business doing, guess what? You're likely to get swooped up in the fold. There are even talks about possible pausing enforcement in certain industries like farming and hospitality because of worries about the economic hit. That just shows how complex the trade-offs are. The breaking point might not be one single dramatic event. It could be more like a gradual pileup of economic strain, labor shortages, and social disruption, and crumbling trust that altogether weaken communities and the wider economy. It really comes down to resilience. How much pressure can local economies and social systems take before the damage becomes more widespread and much harder to fix? Those answers are being shaped right now in communities all across the country. So the idea of ICE raids paralyzing nations, businesses gone, economic collapsing now, is a powerful statement to make in the headlines, but it taps into deep anxieties and in some specific places reflects truly severe disruption. But based on the verifiable information we have right now in mid-June of 2025, the most extreme nationwide versions of the headlines don't quite match the current reality. However, the issues underneath it all are true. So there are incredible critical issues that needs to be addressed. Fear isn't in itself a potent economic force. It can slow down businesses and empty out main streets, even if there isn't a massive raid happening right there, right then. Documented increases in immigration enforcement do have significant, often painful effects on labor markets, specific industries, and the daily lives of millions, including U.S. citizens, where businesses struggle, families face terrifying uncertainties, and communities have to deal with the social and psychological fallout. The real challenge is figuring out how to handle the complicated intersection of immigration law, economic realities, and basic human dignity. So this isn't a simple story of immediate collapse. It's a story of significant ongoing stresses that demand a clear-eyed look at thoughtful solutions where, look at that, I see you, where the economic health of so many communities is tied up with the lives and work of immigrants. Ignoring their contributions or ignoring the impact of policies that create widespread fear and instability has a cost. And this is a cost America is still trying to figure out, because it will impact the Americans that are still here after they get rid of all of the non-Americans that didn't belong here. So the conversation about how to balance enforcement with economic stability and humanitarian concerns is something that we need to look into, and it is more urgent than ever. Now, Bayside said all these kids being torn from their families are gonna grow up to have deep hatred towards Americans, where and we are creating monsters. Yeah, that's gonna be the other fallout. It's gonna be like a Kill Bill movie. Like you're with 13 million citizens being taken out of the country, the next generation of citizens that are left behind are going to hate this country. And then those individuals are going to be part of the American citizens that take over the country. Not by war, not by rebellion, because the current generation, 8 through 12, will be the leaders of our country in 15 years. So the fallout of the decisions that you make might not impact you in your lifetime over the age of 40, over the age of 60, but it will impact your children's lifestyle when they make it to 40. Chris says most liberals hate this country. Yeah. Special shout out to Robust Empty Reen. He says, so should we not enforce a martial law simply because some people will be upset about it? That's a good question. How do you feel about being restricted to leave your house? And if you leave your house without the permission of somebody else, that they will put you in jail? That's like being grounded. You ain't even do nothing. You are not the reason why these people are out here acting ass, and you not out here acting ass with them. Do you think that it's fair that you can't go out to your local pub and get yourself a drink of beer after a hard day's work because somebody else was acting a damn fool down the street when you was a child, because that's what they're treating you like right now when they enforce that martial law. When you was a child, did you think it was fair that you got grounded with everybody else? He said moral law. My apologies. I thought you said martial law. My apologies. He said moral law. Do I think that we should enforce a more? Fuck yeah, I think there needs to be uniformity in this. That's what we need, more than just moral law. Because when we start talking about yeah, exactly, Chris, COVID lockdowns, that's where we're about to head. But we're supposed to be thinking about the ethics behind this. So if an individual has no criminal record and they're an illegally documented immigrant here, what you should be doing is offering them citizenship because they've been here for over a decade and it didn't cause no trouble. That's what you should be doing. I think that would be the right way to go. Give the ones that's already been doing it right citizenship. Understandably, yes, they went down the wrong path. They didn't make the right choices, but they're not fucking up. Now, the people that's got criminal records, that those people who have gained criminal records after they got here, you can get rid of the troublemakers. I completely agree with getting rid of the troublemakers, but getting rid of people on an administrative clerical error, I don't think that that's fair. Because when you say, oh, well, we didn't vet them. So if the motherfucker owns a business, bro, he's paying people that are American citizens to come to work every day. You should be able to house arrest his ass and vet him. Because how the hell did he get that business? Somebody knows that he exists. CIA been watching him for a while. FBI been watching them for a while. Why you think they out there? DEA know where the fuck these people is at. Why you think that they're targeting locations? Because they know where these people are and they've known where these people have been for the past 30 years. So why didn't you just put forth your effort to send fucking DCF and ICE caseworkers over there and go and get these people some damn legitimate citizenship? Why y'all don't got citizenship programs where they can get registered? That's what I'm talking about. I want to keep going with this topic, but unfortunately I got to cut it short because, I got contracts that started just now. So I want to keep this conversation going. I'm going to follow up on this conversation next week on Monday as things unfurls. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about some business and finance topics. So if you guys are learning or wanting to hear some information on invest stocks, bonds, mutualities, and other such, we even talk about cryptocurrencies and precious metals and other golds. We will be keeping up with the trends. On Tuesday, Wednesday, we're going to be talking about different countries, and Thursday through Sunday, we're going to be talking about self-improvement in many different ways, including business, finance, and personal and relationships. So stay tuned for the other topics that we have throughout the week. But if you want to dive back in next week, Monday, on exactly this topic and topics similar to this one, feel free to like and subscribe on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, whichever channel you're watching me on, and then come back to the show and we can argue this till there's no end. Because I love what you guys have to say, and I really appreciate you guys coming to the show. But unfortunately, I have to cut it short. He says there is a citizen essay. Okay. And Robust says, agree, no trouble, no trouble. Here for a decade or two and living this country, set them up with a temporary citizenship to see if they would make a good full one. Exactly. Like fucking probation. If you did that, you wouldn't be getting rid of 13 million. You might be getting rid of 1 million, but you wouldn't be getting rid of 13 million. You wouldn't be collapsing our agricultural and hardworking industry if you just gave it to them. They've been here for 10, 20, 30 years. Now, they just got here in the last 6 months. You might want to send them back. But I mean, if they've been here for a couple decades and established businesses and paid taxes and shit, like they're doing what American people don't do. Get them a chance. That's all I got to say. Now, unfortunately, I got to wrap this up because I'm 2 minutes late for my engagement, and I don't like keeping my clients in Asia waiting because I do international business. This is why I talk to you guys about worldwide business and spending and investing. I want to say on my way out the door, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to keep asking you to make it make sense. So ladies, please make it make sense. Fellas, this is a male-driven podcast. 75% of the podcast is male-driven podcast from the male's perspective. So you will get my point of view from a male's perspective on a regular basis. But ladies, y'all can learn something from here too. We are live 7 nights a week. We don't let the sun rise without going live. So make sure that you come back for more information about more of the topics that you're interested in. And if there is a topic that I haven't covered that you want me to cover, make sure you put that in the comment section or send me a message after the show in the community chat, and I'll cover your interests and give you all the information that you need as long as it is an appropriate topic. That's how we go with these things. He said, can you sing? No, I am not singing a Neil Diamond song. With that being said, I want to thank you guys for coming to This and That, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. I'm your host, Xander, and any positive comments that are coming out during the outro of this will be put up onto the show. So I want you guys to enjoy Higher Ground. That was created by alanito.music from Switzerland and promoted by Danny in Denmark. Again, international business. Thank you guys one more time. I'll see you guys tomorrow night.
Chase validation, now I validate myself. Building inner strength, putting doubt upon the shelf. No more unnecessary drama, no more wasted time. Climbing higher, constantly making my own climb. My network is my net worth. Choose your company wise. Surround yourself with eagles, not with sheep in disguise. Every interaction is a reflection of my brand. Quality over quantity, that's my personal command. I'm not mounted on higher ground where excellence is found. My potential knows no bounds, raising the bar, breaking ground. Just living, I'm manifesting my vision, cutting through limitations with surgical precision. My expectations are my compass, my respect is my shield to mediocrity and chaos. I will never